This part should take about 30 minutes. And after that, we'll spend about an hour, maybe a little more, talking with our featured speakers who are going to tell us about their lives and their ancestors and growing up in Santa Barbara. All right, so let me start by introducing you to the Outreach Committee. This committee is chaired by Holly Snyder, who was born and raised in Santa Barbara. She is a former elementary school teacher and an art teacher. Holly is currently a library technician with the Santa Barbara Public Library System. She's been a member of the Santa Barbara County Genealogical Society since 2016 and the chair of the Outreach Committee since 2018. And she's here today to speak briefly about the new exhibit and her role in the exhibit making process. Also on the committee is Onja Brown, and she's lived in Carpinteria for 19 years and Santa Barbara for 15 years. She worked for the Carpinteria Unified School District as a home hospital therapist. Onja has been a member of the Santa Barbara County Genealogical Society for 7 years. Onja is a member of the Outreach Committee for the Society, and she will talk about her role in the exhibit process. And finally on the committee is Kate Lima. And Kate has lived in Santa Barbara since 1978. She worked at UCSB as an academic administrator for 28 years, retiring in 2019. She started researching her family tree about 15 years ago and quickly got hooked. She joined the Santa Barbara Genealogical Society in 2014. And Kate is an outreach member for the society, and she's going to also talk about her role in the exhibit process. So back to you, Holly.
Thank you. Okay, so 2 years ago, as part of its community outreach, Santa Barbara County Genealogical Society started creating family history exhibits with the theme of family history and different cultures, really spotlighting their culture and contributions in our community. Our first exhibit focused on early Santa Barbara Italian immigrants. And then there was a second exhibit focusing on Jewish heritage. And we partnered with a few members of our local Jewish genealogy special interest group. And so now the current exhibit is the Santa Barbara African American Life, Culture, and Contributions from 1890 to 1990. So we focus on 19 featured individuals and their families who've made significant contributions to the Santa Barbara community. As the exhibit developed, we expanded it to include outstanding organizations, churches, businesses, athletes, military, artists, famous visitors. Today, you'll hear firsthand from 3 members of Outreach and how they developed the exhibit. And then you'll get to hear from 4 of our outstanding featured exhibit participants. I'm really excited. I highly encourage you to visit the website, the exhibit. And if you haven't seen the exhibit yet, please go see it. There's so many stories that are just fantastic. We can put the link in the chat box. So first, I'm gonna go to the Outreach Committee to talk about the process. And Outreach Committee member Onja Brown will talk about her role in the exhibit.
Yeah, the exhibit focuses on 19 individuals. First, I'm going to give you a little background on the exhibit. Holly already gave you a brief background, and I will too a little bit. Will probably say a few different things, and then I'll start. I'll talk about the process itself and how we did the planning of the exhibit. It focuses on about 19 families that have made significant contribution to both the entire community of Santa Barbara, as well as the African American community between 1890 and 1990. Originally, the exhibit was to focus on families, but as it developed, as Holly said, we got into more of the culture exhibit of those that have favorite, what am I trying to say? Those that were had visited Santa Barbara that were outstanding. We went into the churches, and then businesses that started around the 1940s, and also the military. In 1940, the total population of the African American community was about 340 females and 300 males. In the city, at the time, about 35,000. 10 years later, the population increased exponentially with about the same percentage as the city's population, that is the African American community. This increase was mostly due to the military bases located nearby in Santa Maria. Most of the individuals seemed to be from Texas, Oklahoma, Mississippi, and Louisiana. A few of the outstanding members at the time were Otto and Emma Hopkins, Herman and Valencia Nelson, James C. and Evelyn Norman, and Llewellyn Smith and Irene Spencer. After working on the Italian exhibit and learning about the completion of the Jewish exhibit, I suggested that we focus on the African American families. The list of families was developed. Each family was called and explained what the intended outcome would be. Though most were thoroughly delighted, a few had previously been contacted by other individuals who were working on who needed similar information. So it was a little bit confusing for some. As the exhibit developed, few families weren't able to continue, and 4 families were later included. My primary role was to ensure that the communication of both the families and the researcher was maintained in order to make progress. Over the years, there has been many great interests. There has been increased interest in the life and history of African American life and culture, as well as an increase in cataloging information and identifying important landmarks, which include St. Paul African Methodist Episcopal Church, which recently was given landmark status, state landmark status. Also, the University of California, Santa Barbara has increased efforts in expanding their special collections section. Organizations that supported the community over the years have included George Washington Carver Club, the NAACP, the Elks Club, and later the Franklin Center and the Endowment for Youth, the Martin Luther King Committee, and then more recently, more youth-led organizations include Juneteenth Celebration, the Young Black Professionals, Healing Justice, and Black Culture House. The church plays an important role in the African American community. 4 churches were signaled out as having been the foundation of the community since the 1940s. They include St. Paul African Methodist Episcopal Church, Second Baptist Church, Friendship Missionary Church, and Greater Hope Baptist Church. Since there had to be an end to the research of this project, featuring such a broad spectrum of life and culture would be impossible to accomplish within such a limited frame of time. It was decided that we would end with what already had been gathered. However, the idea of adding in the future was also proposed. The outreach committee were very thorough in the pursuit of making genealogical connections with documented evidence related to time and place of events. The end result is an exhibit that showcases a small smattering of the rich, vibrant life and culture of the African Americans that cover a 100-year period. It honors those that have made an outstanding contribution to the fabric of Santa Barbara, the Santa Barbara community, and the entire world. Despite living in a climate where racial discrimination made it more challenging to survive and thrive. Thank you.
And I wanted to also say that Onja was our critical point of initial contacts, and so she really got us started. That was really important. Now we have Kate Lima sharing her role and challenges that we faced.
So yes, after Onja contacted many people and sent emails, sent letters, made phone calls, it came to the committee, and there are 7 of us, I think there's 7 of us. And from that list, we all took people that we wanted or would, are able to research and contact. And the plus side is everything that we researched was incredibly interesting. And, a lot of us just couldn't get enough. Okay, I'm mostly speaking for myself when I say I just wanted to follow every little path that the research and their genealogy took me. It was a lot of fun. But the other thing in putting this very big exhibit on is we had a number of difficulties. And the first was just starting with the phone calls, trying to get people to contact us. It was right before Black History Month. And a number of the people we were working with are still extremely active in the social and civic life in Santa Barbara and elsewhere. And so it was really hard to just touch base and get information because it is a lot. We were asking a lot of the people, filling out forms and talking to us. It was a lot of work for them. So when they got back, it was wonderful, but sometimes it took quite a while. The other big problem we found as we were going along was sometimes information wasn't correct in the newspapers, in the census records. My biggest example is the Forney family. There was a big question mark in the Forney family, and I hope everyone can look at the two, Jerry Forney and George Eugene Forney. But there's a plaque downtown that says that Jerry Forney was Eugene Forney's father. And, people think it's a historic plaque. What's wrong with a historic plaque? Well, it wasn't right. But it sends us down all of these different paths. So I was trying to go in a different area from what was actually being told to us. And it was thrilling. It was so much fun. For genealogists, we just live and die on this stuff. But it was a big hindrance. And that wasn't the only error that we found. There were some in newspaper magazines everywhere. The worst problem by far is we are in a pandemic, and you wouldn't think that a pandemic, all you're going to do is sit and go online. Well, the big UCSB is one of the largest resources for African-American exhibits and information, especially Santa Barbara. They have a group called the Cultural and Ethnic Multicultural Archive, SEMA. And they have been a repository for Santa Barbara African-American people, their papers, there's oral recordings that we would have been able to get, but it was closed. So I used to work at UCSB, and I actually used to work right across the hallway from Shirley Kennedy. And I said, I would love to do all of this work on Shirley Kennedy. And I was stopped in my tracks because I was not able to get anyone to help me. So it was, what I ended up doing was a lot of stuff online. Fortunately, I found her daughter, who has a unique name, and I found her email and I contacted her, and she ended up giving me a lot of the family history, and that just gave so much more flavor to it. But Santa Barbara Historical Library was closed, UCSB, all these different places were closed to us. And I do want to put it on my list. It is on my list to go later and add to this collection. But it was incredibly fun. It was difficult, but it was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Kate. Yes, it was challenging, but the road was really fun. And so I'm going to talk about the technology part of our exhibit. We started planning the very beginning just before the pandemic hit, and then all of a sudden everything closes, and our physical exhibit that we were planning on is now going to be virtual. So I had to quickly help the outreach committee in learning technology tools and how to use, we're going to use Google Drive and Google Slides so we can collaborate together. And I think they did a great job. And I also had the pleasure to work with Ms. Melvin Richey and Mr. Wilbur Tate with their presentations. And I cannot get enough of listening to their stories. So I hope you enjoy our next part of the presentation and hear from our featured speakers themselves.
So now it is the moment you've all been waiting for. Featured speakers are going to be telling you about their experiences. But before that, let me tell you a little bit about these amazing people. Wilbur Hopkins Tate. Family and friends throughout Santa Barbara and his hometown of Pasadena call Mr. Wilbur Hopkins Tate by his nickname of Kim. Wilbur is recently retired from Cal State Fullerton after 19 years. At the university, he served as assistant dean, taught African American history, worked as an advisor for the Educational Opportunity Program and Student Support Services. In addition, he also participated for a number of years as a statewide board member of the CSU African American Statewide Initiative, Retention Initiative. Before CSUF, Wilbur was employed as the special assistant to the Speaker of the House of California State Assembly, Willie L. Brown, Jr. Speaker Brown was the first African American and the longest serving assembly member in the history of California. He served also as transportation commissioner for the city of Pasadena. Before his retirement with the California State Legislature, Wilbur previously followed his childhood dream and played professional basketball in Europe, in France, Holland, and Spain. Now that he's retired, he spends much of his time in real estate development and volunteering to assist our inner city youth with educational outreach. Most importantly, Wilbur has been married to the love of his life, Gail Parker Tate, for 25 years. Like his mother, Earlene, she too is a social worker, supervisor of the Department of Children and Family Services. Wilbur is the grandson of Otto and Emma Hopkins and son of their daughter, Earlene Hopkins Tate, who are one of the featured families in the exhibit. Wanda Thomas. Ms. Wanda Thomas is the youngest of two daughters born to Joe and Hannah Thomas, both deceased. Her parents and grandparents moved to Santa Barbara in the 1940s. She was born in Santa Barbara, California, and is a proud Santa Barbara High School Don. Once a Don, always a Don. Wanda is also a proud mother of one daughter, Adia Jo Norris, who is an educator in Louisville, Kentucky. Wanda is divorced and raised her daughter as a single parent with the love and support of her family. Sister Beatrice resides in Oxnard, California, with her husband, Andy, and two adult sons. Wanda believes in family and support of family. She is very active in her local and connectional Christian Methodist Episcopal Church family. She is happily retired after a long, successful career at UC Santa Barbara. She loves the rich legacy her ancestors have left her, and she gladly shares with her younger family members and connecting with older family members. She spends her time traveling between Santa Barbara and Louisville after being vaccinated. Mr. Isaac Garrett has been a resident of Santa Barbara since 1960. He met and married his wife Alice and raised 3 children here. Isaac has been in real estate business since 1973. He worked with and supported the local, state, and national association of realtors. He served on the local board of directors, numerous committees, chair of several, and currently is serving his 26th year on the Professional Standards Committee. For over 24 years, Isaac has served as a mediator and arbitrator for Santa Barbara and the California Association of Realtors, and 6 years as a lay arbitrator for the California and Santa Barbara County Bar Association. For over 47 years, he has been a leader for racial equality and justice for all people in Santa Barbara. His service to the community includes, but is not limited to, appointments to numerous Santa Barbara City, County, and School District committees, member of the Santa Barbara JCs, served 6 years as president of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People in Santa Barbara, the Santa Barbara branch, 1 year on the Santa Barbara County Grand Jury, and chair of the Criminal Justice Committee. Isaac is one of the founding members and past president of the Martin Luther King Jr. Committee of Santa Barbara and current vice president. He has received numerous recognition awards from the community and real estate industry for his commitment and dedication to the Santa Barbara community, including JC of the Year Award, Santa Barbara News Press's Lifetime Achievement Award, Realtor of the Year Award, and Realtor Emeritus, to name a few. Ms. Melvin Jenkins Richey was born and raised in Mississippi. She grew up living and working on various plantations until she left Mississippi for Santa Barbara in 1963. She is passionate about her large family, which consists of 5 children, 12 grandchildren, and 11 great-grandchildren, as well as her church, faith in God, and education. Melvin earned her AA degree at Santa Barbara City College and Bachelor's of Science in Computerized Business Management at the Academy International School. She was the complaint specialist at the Better Business Bureau for 18 years.
Will.
Listen.
She is an active church member, community advocate, and volunteer, and enjoys writing short stories about her family. Melvin is the founder of the Endowment for Youth Committee, served on the city's Franklin Neighborhood Advisory Committee for 9 years, participated in the county jail ministry for women for 25 years, and started missionary work as a young matron within her church's missionary department, making missionary visits to families, hospitals, and distributing supplies to the homeless. So now that you've met and learned about our featured panelists, let's start asking them some questions. So our first question is for all of you, and that is, where was your family from and what brought your family or you to Santa Barbara? So let's start off with Wilbur. How did you end up here?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, my family left Texas during the Great Migration. Actually, my grandfather was born in 1896. And 1896 was the legalization of Plessy versus Ferguson, which was the legalization of Jim Crow, segregation. And during this period of time, my grandfather and his family decided to leave Texas and move out west to California. Now, mind you, in 1917, my grandfather was approximately 21 years old. And during this period in time, the bloody riots were going on. Wall Street, the Black Wall Street was being bombed and bombarded. It's the first time in American history that you had bombs dropped on American citizens. So all of this was going on. So he left Texas with his family and headed out west to California to seek a better life.
Thank you, Wilbur. How about you, Wanda? What brought you or your family to Santa Barbara?
Well, I was born in Santa Barbara, but both my maternal and paternal grandparents also migrated from Texas at different times. They didn't know each other then, but they came in the early 40s. And based on the stories that I've heard from both of them, they also left the South because of economic and social hardships. And it had become increasingly dangerous for African Americans to live in Texas, not to mention the difficulties in finding gainful employment. And also, one thing that I did want to add is that my grandparents never really talked about the lynchings and the brutality that African Americans faced, but I think that's probably the reason why a lot of folks left the South at that time. My maternal grandparents, before coming to Santa Barbara, they lived in Douglas, Arizona. And because my grandfather's brother, Bodie, was in Santa Barbara, he was encouraged by another brother to join them in Santa Barbara. So both sets of my grandparents, maternal and paternal, not only ended up in Santa Barbara, but my grandfathers became best friends, which I think is wonderful. And they remained in Santa Barbara because it was, even though there were racial problems in Santa Barbara, they weren't to the extent of what they saw in Texas.
Okay, how about you, Isaac? What brought you or your family to Santa Barbara?
Well, I was born and raised in the great state of Louisiana. I was educated there, primary and secondary schools as well. In the late 50s, my family moved to the state of Michigan. However, we experienced some of the same problems in Michigan that we had left Louisiana to try to avoid. I traveled through the Midwest for several years, ended up in Florida, didn't like it there, and I decided to either go west or east. I decided on California because of the weather. My original destination was San Francisco, but I had a brother living here at the time, so I stopped by to visit him. I stayed a while, then I did make it to San Francisco, but didn't like it and ended up back in Santa Barbara. I was single at the time, no family.
We're glad you stuck around. How about you, Mel? How did you get to Santa Barbara? What brought you here?
My husband had family here in Santa Barbara. And obviously from the South, Mississippi, we were trying to find a better life for ourselves. So that's how we got here. And, you know, just looked like a whole different world to us. But, you know, we loved it. So, and we met people and, you know, to help us out when we first got here, people we didn't know, which was great. I did find out that there was African-American lady here that owned property. And actually, her name was Christine Gibbons. She became our first landlord in Santa Barbara. So that was, you know, that was very different from the South.
So what was your most memorable experience in your early years in Santa Barbara? And this question is also for all the panelists.
Well, first, I guess the first thing was really exciting to me is that we hadn't been here that long, and I walked down State Street, and I got my first job with it was what was it? I'm sorry, you're getting me mixed up. It's just because I'm new to this Zoom thing, so I got to get
great.
I have to get my thoughts together. But it was my first job as a dishwasher at this restaurant, which was very unusual because I didn't see any Black faces in there first. So I was really kind of scared that I was thinking, well, how long I am going to be here, you know, or is this just a short-term thing and I'm going to get sent home? But I didn't. And aside from that, there was all kinds of other things. You know, I finally got a job with the Franklin School as a teacher's aide for the 5th graders. I just, you know, followed the rules of the land and kept going. And finally, I supervised the cafeteria at Franklin. Then I was at the Children's Center substituting. So things were looking up for me at that point. So I was really getting happier and happier, you know, because I was making a difference by, you know, by getting the things done that I always had a goal to do. And so it was all just happy and fun at that point.
That's awesome. How about you, Wilbur? What was your most memorable experience in your early years?
Yes. Well, although I didn't live in Santa Barbara, I spent most of my weekends, my sister and I think she just popped in a little while ago. My sister, Dr. Tate, and I, as children, spent most of our weekends, summer vacations, Christmas, all the holidays or any breaks that we could muster up. We spent them in Santa Barbara. But some of my best memories is spending time with my grandmother, eating all of her good food, going to the Fiesta Parade. After the Fiesta Parade, stopping on Haley Street to a restaurant called La Teteca and getting not just 1, 2, or 3 trays of enchiladas, but maybe 4, 5, and 6 trays. And spending time at the ranch, going down to Franklin School, playing during the summertime, doing arts and crafts. So yes, we both had a ball. It was a wonderful experience.
Sounds like it.
Mhm.
How about you, Wanda?
I think my most cherished memories are with my family. Because even though I have a small immediate family, I just have one sister, B. Our house would always be the gathering place for all the family. And there we would sit and listen to all their stories, and it would be like therapy to your soul. And growing up in Santa Barbara, I had a lot of first and second cousins who were more like siblings. In fact, my mother's youngest brother, Felix, his son Todd was like my little brother, so he was always there to torture us. And my cousin Suzette, even though she lived in Santa Barbara, she would spend her summers with my sister and myself. So it would be loud, but lots of love. And I really miss those days, and I cherish them. And it's ironic because even though my parents, both sides were from Texas, when they all moved to Santa Barbara, my grandfathers, maternal and paternal, they became best friends. So both sides of my family would always be together.
Oh,
So that was just really a good time. And those are the memories that I really hold on to. And that's one of the reasons that piqued my interest in ancestry, because I wanted my daughter and my nephews and cousins to have that close relationship with each other, and to the city here in Santa Barbara. Well, and I'm not in Santa Barbara right this second, but in Santa Barbara, because we were so fortunate to grow up there.
mhm.
My memories are of my youth, my church, my family, and fiesta, and the 4th of July digging pits on the beach.
I love that.
Wood.
And last but not least, how about you, Isaac? What is your most memorable experience?
Well, my most memorable experience is I thought I had made it to the promised land, and the disappointment that I got after I began to seek employment. I was a professional truck driver with my chauffeur's license when I arrived here, but I was unable to secure a job as a truck driver here in Santa Barbara. Reason being that I was able to pass all of the tests through the DMV, et cetera, but you had to provide the rig that you was proposing to operate in order to pass the driver's test.
Wow.
Not being able to secure employment with an agency that would allow me to get that experience, I was unable to obtain my license. So therefore, my truck driving experience was all over with. And I never forgot that.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, let's go back to Wilbur. Wilbur, this is a
Yes.
two-part question. Otto Hopkins was one of the largest African-American landowners in Southern California, where he started a business. Can you share with us what prompted him to start his Cleanway Garbage Service Company, and what was unique about the method he used in collecting and disposing of the trash in his business? And also, who did he sell his business to, and why?
Oh, yes.
And why?
Yes. Yes. My grandfather, some say he was a genius of a businessman, but as I mentioned earlier, I never did a quantitative analysis of his intelligence, nor would I want to. But he always mentioned he had to have at least 4 or 5 streams of revenue coming into your household. So he said always to be a success, you always have to fill the need of the public. So during this time in the 20s and 30s, there was no trash pickup for Montecito and or Santa Barbara. That's why in Santa Barbara and Montecito, in the backyards of these older homes, you might see something that looks like a concrete barbecue pit. But what it is an incinerator where you burn your trash. So you have wet trash, you have dry trash. So the wet trash is like your table goods, your banana peels and all of that mess that you eat at the table. So you would usually burn that. And they didn't have very many plastics during that time, which we have to get back to. Not very many plastics, but you had porcelain and a lot of tin. So you have to take that physically to the dump. So my grandfather came up with an idea to hire some folks and purchase 4 trucks and pick up the trash in Montecito and in Santa Barbara. And that was very successful for over 20 or 30 years, maybe 25 years. And due to some health challenges and actually some legislation and policy similar to what Mr. Garrett is speaking of, he was forced to purchase 4 more trucks. He had 4 already, but they required 4 more trucks. And at the time, his health was compromised, and Mr. Borgatella and Charles and Muriel Borgatella offered to buy my grandfather out. So my grandfather told me that the Borgatella brothers were very fair and gave him a fair price for his garbage route. So he sold it to the Borgatella brothers. But yes, getting back to the trash. So he, once he collected the trash, he took it out to the ranch where he had hogs at that time. He's one of the largest hog business owners in the state of California during that time. And he built a sterilizer on his ranch to sterilize the wet garbage, which is off your tables and all that good trash from Montecito. He sterilized that and fed it to the hogs. So in turn, the butchers and slaughterhouses from Los Angeles, like Oscar Mayer and Farmer John, would come out to the ranch and purchase the hogs. The whole recycled business started again.
That was amazing.
Thank you. I hope I covered it all. Thank you.
I mean, it's so amazing how he was such an early recycler like that.
Yes, before it was
Guy.
called recycling. Yes, thank you.
And who are the Borgatella brothers today?
Oh, yes,
Tell us
yes,
who
yes.
that was.
Oh my gosh. Oh, yes. Charles and Muriel Borgatellas. They really became friends of my grandfather. And today they started one of the largest recycling business in the state of California called Marg Borg. I'm sure some of us might have seen these porta potties,
Oh yeah.
trash trucks, Marg Borg. That's Muriel Borgatella. And they slipped his wife's name in there too. So Marg Borg is Muriel Borgatella. And yes, they got this start from Mr. Hopkins.
That's great.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about the work furlough program on the ranch that your grandfather and Sheriff Ross initiated and developed?
Yes, good old Sheriff Ross. Yes. In the early, well, you know that yes. So in 1930, my grandfather started a work furlough program with the city of Santa Barbara and Sheriff Ross, where nonviolent criminals could work off their time at the ranch in lieu of time to be served. So yes, that was very successful for about 25 or 30 years. And also when that particular segment happened, the prisoners were allowed to have their families live on the ranch. So we had children on the ranch with the prisoners. And during this time, they had no labor laws until 1938. That was the first children labor laws. And so he had kids working from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. But my grandfather had none of that. He made sure that the children attended school, the children did not work. He made sure he contacted Carpinteria, the Unified School District, and they had the first bus to pick up children on Casitas Pass in the 1928, 1930 years. So yes, he started that furlough program. It was very successful. And to this day, they have a bus to pick up the children on Casitas Pass to take them to the Carpinteria schools.
And he was instrumental in getting that law passed, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. Yes, it was some hard work, but he got it done with help from the community. Yes.
That's great.
Thank you.
All right, Wanda, your family helped found the Lewis Chapel CME Church in Santa Barbara. Can you tell us more about how that came about?
Certainly. The CME Church stands for Christian Methodist Episcopal, and it was formerly Colored Methodist Episcopal. It was founded in 1870. It's part of 3 Methodist Episcopal churches that branched off from the Methodist Episcopal South Church, which was predominantly white. And so they split off to the AME, African Methodist Episcopal, and the AME Zion, African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, and the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. Well, both of my great-grandparents were CME ministers back in East Texas. So when my grandparents came to Santa Barbara along with my grandfather's brother, there was no CME church. So they said, well, let's start a CME church here. So my grandmother's brother, my Uncle Charlie, he was a presiding elder, and he would come out from St. Louis to Santa Barbara to help get the church started, actually in my grandparents' living room. So they worshiped in different places and finally raised enough money to begin building in 1955. And then in 1957, after the church members, because there were other, after that point, there were other people besides my family that were from Texas, that were CMEs in Texas that joined in. They raised enough money to start the church. However, they did run out of money at some point, and thank goodness the roof was on, so the building didn't get completely ruined. But the city came in, actually, and a couple of contractors, I think it was Mr. Bryant and Mr. Owens, they came in and they actually helped complete Lewis Chapel. So in 1957, a year before I was born, they marched from one of the places that they were worshiping in, and they marched to Lewis Chapel, which is at 202 East Gutierrez Street. And the keys were handed to my grandfather, and the church still stands. But it was because of the city that the church was actually completed. And it's truly a community church. And there's only one surviving member of Lewis Chapel, and her name is Julia Sims Taylor. And she's not only an officer of the church, she is also the church musician. And lastly, I just want to add this. That's where I know Mr. Garrett from, and I've known him basically all my life, because he was the usher of Lewis Chapel and has always been a friend to Lewis Chapel and to my family. So that's how it started.
Wow. All right, Mel, what was your experience working on a plantation in Mississippi as a child? What was it like to live and work in the same place?
Well, I don't think there's enough time to really tell you all about
Probably not.
Mississippi and the plantation, but of course we, doing the picking cotton, chopping cotton, and all of those things, and working from 6 a.m. in the mornings until 6 p.m. In the evening, and we had a lunch break. After that, we would just go home and try to relax. No running water, no electricity. Of course, that was the Jim Crow era. We all worked together. That was one of the things we were brought up doing and teaching. Our parents taught us, and our grandparents taught us that we had three things to do in this life, and that is to God is first, family is second, and the rest is humanity. So that was our main goal, is to make sure that we were helping each other do that hard work, because it really was hard. We had let's see, that was basically the work that we did. My father worked with the machinery, with tractors and different things that till the land and all of that for crops to be planted and all of those kind of things. So I guess that to try to say a little bit about this is really hard. I started work at a really early age. I had my own little cotton sack made out of material made out of flour sacks, where your flour came in. And so you use that material to make your little flowers, your little cotton picking sack. So it just, pick the cotton, put it in the sack, and that was about it. And I was the family gardener. So I had a lot to do with vegetables and anything that grew in the garden.
So you must have a very green thumb.
Well, for vegetables, I kind of do, but flowers, no.
No. I love these stories of community and family. But let's turn now to your school experiences. Let's go back to
Oh,
Wilbur.
yes. Well, we had an all black school. Professor J.D. Williams was the principal, his wife, and they had 2 kids. I participated in a lot of plays that we had. That we had very good teachers. The one thing that you could not do, if you didn't finish one grade, you couldn't go to another grade until you finished that prior grade. And so, and that was tough for some people, you know, but I never had to repeat a grade, thank God. But a lot of people did. The other thing is that we thought our professor was the best looking man in the world, of course, you know.
Wow.
And, but I did have a 3rd grade teacher, Noel Michael Henry, married to Aaron Henry, who worked with NAACP. Her teaching license was revoked. She could never teach in the state of Mississippi again. So of course we all felt bad about that, and we were hurt. And you know, but this not only happened to her, but a lot of other people. So you would have to have a whole day for me to tell you all about Mississippi, but that's part of it.
What do you think of your schooling compared to your children's schooling in Santa Barbara?
Well, the difference that I see, that I've seen since my kids were going to school here, that they didn't have those kind of things in Santa Barbara. At the high school or any of the schools that they went to in Santa Barbara, they didn't make you stay at a grade because you didn't finish that grade. You know, you just got passed on to another grade. And that's the difference that I saw or see in Santa Barbara. And you know, not to say that they had good teachers. I think my children had very good teachers, but those were some of the things, or one of the things that I remember seeing is that wasn't done here.
They still do that in some places.
Yeah.
Wilbur, your grandmother, Emma Brown Hopkins, was one of the charter members of the George Washington Carver Scholarship Club of Santa Barbara in 1931. Can you tell us about this organization?
Yes, I'll do the best that I can. Yes, it started in 1931 with my grandmother. She was one of the founding members, Mrs. Emma Ruth Hopkins, and the first president and the first organizer was the late Mamie Wilson. And it was Mamie Wilson's foresight, Mamie Wilson's thought, with Mamie Wilson that created the George Washington Carver Club. It's Mamie Wilson and Margaret Boykins. Her husband was the great Billy Boykins, and Dorothy McCaskill, the great Dorothy McCaskill, and my grandmother and 8 others realized that education was the key to success. It can mobilize you from where you are not now at point A to point B. But they knew that there was a financial need. They knew that the kids or the young adults in Santa Barbara needed mentorship and some financial help. So with that in mind, Mamie Wilson, Margaret Boykins, Dorothy McCaskill, my grandmother, Emma Ruth Hopkins came up with the scholarship component. So yes, so they gave out scholarships to high school students and also to college students that had academic promise and financial need. Now the scholarships were given out at the Montecito Country Club once a year. Now, mind you that the Public Accommodation Act went into existence in 1964. So yes, so once those walls came tumbling down, we just had a ball at the Montecito Country Club. And to see the children's face light up when they received the awards was just outstanding. So it was a dinner dance, and after the awards, we had dancing going on, and it was just a ball. It was a ball, and the reason why they chose George Washington Carver was because at that time, the turn of the century, George Washington Carver was one of the most popular scientists in the Western Hemisphere.
Mhm.
He had over 300 inventions with the peanut. And also he partnered with the US government and Henry Ford to come up with a peanut rubber that was stronger than the rubber from the rubber trees from the motherland.
Wow.
So this rubber wouldn't crack in the harsh temperatures and the cold, and it just lasted. And he also invented crop rotation, where you rotate your crops to bring nutrients to the soil. So Mahatma Gandhi heard about this. Mahatma Gandhi was a vegetarian, and so was most of his countrymen, countrywomen in India. And so they were lacking nutrients in their system. So Mahatma Gandhi made a trek from India over to the States just to speak with George Washington Carver to remedy his situation for a lack of nutrients in his body. And George Washington Carver told Mahatma Gandhi that he needs soy in his diet. And he told Mahatma Gandhi that they need to plant soybean in their soil. So once that happened, once that occurred, this brought the nutrients to the soil, and that resolved the situation. But basically, George Washington Carver, I know I'm going on, was pro-education, and that was one of the reasons due to his scientific achievements and his pro-life, his pro-education, that they selected George Washington Carver as the head of the organization.
Well, he was a fabulous inspiration.
Yes, he was.
So Wanda, what schools did you attend in Santa Barbara? And can you share a little about your experience? Also, your mother, Hannah Sims Thomas, first cousin to Bill Sims, attended Santa Barbara High School in the 1940s and you in the 1970s. What were your high school years like compared to your mother's?
Well, my mother was very, very quiet spoken. So she didn't talk too terribly much about her high school year. She shared that, I think she said she was in choir and she had a couple of close girlfriends, but she didn't go into too many details about her school years. But after she passed away, I went to visit that one really close friend, Mrs. Gilbert. And I did manage to get out of her some of the antics that my mom had, and also about her boyfriend. So, and it's ironic that my mom graduated, I think, from Santa Barbara High in 1947. And my sister graduated from Santa Barbara High in 1974. So after my mother passed, my sister didn't have a high school class ring, and I had it. And so I gave that to my sister because it was just her year of graduating in reverse. But as far as my education, I attended Franklin Elementary for 1 year. And then I went on to, we moved to La Mesa. So I went to Washington Elementary, which is now one of the premier elementary schools in Santa Barbara, and La Cumbre Junior High, where I was very active in theater. And then in Santa Barbara High School, I also was active in theater and music, but at La Cumbre, I was also part of the jazz band under the direction of Mr. Ike Jenkins. It was the first year, I think, that he came to Santa Barbara, and he had started a jazz band, and I was one of the first vocalists. Santa Barbara High, I was very, very active. I was a cheerleader. I was an athlete, played soccer, ran track, or tried to run track, I should say. A member of the Black Student Union and in choir. And just one little hilarious moment was a talent show that I was in, and we decided to not play a prank, but do something different. And the school had just got a baby grand piano. And so when the curtains opened, my friend April Martin was playing the piano and I was singing a Carole King song, and I was actually sitting on the baby grand piano. So anyone that went to Santa Barbara High and knew Mrs. Zimmerman, you can only imagine that she wasn't pleased with us. But I have to say the student body really enjoyed it. But in high school, I really, my focus was on academics. I was a good student, but my love was in theater and in music, which I took after some ancestors, actually. My grandmother's brother was a singer and actor in New York, and a replacement for Paul Robeson as Joe in Showboat when Mr. Robeson was in Europe. But high school was just an extension of my family because I went to school with my sister, and I had like 5 cousins that were in school during that time. My cousin was the only African-American teacher at Santa Barbara High, Myrtle Sims. A history teacher, Mr. Hunter, he was good friends with our family, and so was Mr. Blakeney. And one last thing that I wanted to say was, ironically, my mom and I, we had the same Spanish teacher, even though we were 29 years apart.
Wow.
We had the same Spanish teacher, Mr. Gene Hall, and he actually remembered my mother from when she was a student. So that was really great.
Was that a good thing? Was she a good student?
My mother was an excellent student. I was more the jokester.
Okay.
I was more the jokester and the social butterfly in school, but my mother was an excellent student, and she also went on to City College. I believe that's where the nursing program was during that time, to become an LVN. But my high school years were wonderful. Would I want to do it again? No. But it was really, really socially and academic good.
Great. All right, so let's turn now to talk a little bit about your community activism and contributions. So let's go back to Wilbur. Your mother, Earlene Hopkins Tate, grew up in Santa Barbara and then moved to Pasadena.
Yes.
Can you share with us the differences in prejudice and racial discrimination between generations as you described in the exhibit? So what were some of the things that your mother did to help break down the racial barriers?
Yes, well, she did. First of all, she strived for excellence in academics. She made sure that she received all A's, made sure she was on the honor roll. And she graduated in 2 years from Santa Barbara High School. So this is one of the ways that she's strived to achieve excellence and combat racism. But one of her early experiences with racism was when she was a child graduating from Santa Barbara High School. Now, one of her dear friends, who was Caucasian, the parents refused to have the daughter walk next to my mother, who was African American, on the stage. And this really broke my mother's heart. It really devastated her at the time. And what my grandfather told me, he told my mother to stop crying, hold your head up. You're an African queen. You're Earlene, Frederick, Douglas, Hopkins. Wipe those tears from your eyes. Go across that graduation stage, get that diploma, and give your friend a nod, and just keep it moving. And let's go on down to USC. So that's basically how she dealt with it. But prejudice at that time and discrimination is the same yesterday, it's the same today. It's the same when we first arrived in 1619, it's the same today. It's the same when the first slaves that came out of Spain in the 1500s under Pope Martin V experienced and were taken across the water to the island of Hispaniola, which is Haiti today. So the same racism that they experienced at that time, we're experiencing today. Maybe it's not quite in your face as it was during that time. Maybe we're not in physical bondage, but we're still bonded up by our minds. But yes, so racism and prejudice from yesterday is pretty much the same today in my personal, in my experiences.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, let's turn to Isaac. Isaac, what led you to become a real estate agent? What were some of your biggest challenges as a real estate agent in the earlier years? And when did you start to see positive changes in the housing market for Black homeowners?
Well, there was a number of reasons why I turned to the real estate profession. The number one reason was I had been employed by private industry and governmental agencies. And I had witnessed and been a victim of discriminatory practices against colored people and minorities when it came to promoting and hiring for good paying positions. I needed a change from that type of environment that will allow me to develop my skills and reach my full potential. I needed to be challenged instead of being discouraged and having impediments placed in my way when I showed ambition. All I wanted was the playing field to be level. As much as I wanted to believe that America was a good country, my faith had begun to diminish. I wanted a job that would allow me more time and freedom to work on eliminating those problems that I've just described. I wanted America to live up to the promise of the land of the free and the home of the brave. I did not want my life to be controlled by someone who did not have my best interests at heart. I wanted every person who had the ability and the financial resources to be able to buy a home of their choice without real estate agents steering them to neighborhoods they thought were suitable for them. After all, home ownership is one of the ways working people have to create wealth. I wanted minorities as well as anyone else to be able to have that opportunity to provide that for their families. Some of the challenges in the early years was getting past the practices that was being felt at that time, which in some areas was discrimination. There were unwritten laws that some areas would not be shown to people of color and specifically Blacks. Those barriers needed to be eliminated. Although in 1968, the federal government passed a fair housing law, at that time, the National Association of Realtors was opposed to that. Therefore, they did not encourage the state associations nor the local associations to eliminate racial discrimination. And in fact, there's a couple of areas in this local area vicinity that had in their CC and ROs that prohibited not only Blacks from purchasing a home in that area, but others as well. And that was one of the things that I just could not accept after learning in my civics class in Louisiana, the privileges and rights that a person, a first-class citizen, are supposed to have. And I always considered myself being a first-class citizen. I tried to live that way. And it was unacceptable to me to have to endure those type of racial discrimination practices.
So is that what prompted you to run for public office?
That is a part of it. I felt that if you want to talk about a democratic society, then I believe you must have representatives from all segments of that society. In 1968, the Santa Barbara electoral system changed from the district election system to a charter system with that at-large system for council members. The system eliminated true representation, in my opinion. The system provided domination by the powerful and the well-connected. The little people's problems were at the mercy of the powerful to provide what they determined to be the answers, what the answer should be. I wanted to be a voice for those who did not understand how the system worked and gave them a choice to vote for a candidate who were in the same category they were and who would be a true representative for them. I knew the only way we could get meaningful changes in our city government, we needed to change the decision makers. And the best way I thought we could do that would be to change the way we elect our city officials. This is the reason why I support and advocate for the return of the district election system. I was also an advocate for term limits for our city elected officials, because with the at-large system and without term limits, it was almost impossible for a new candidate to win an election once the current officials got established. At one time, the compensation for city council members was only $800 and $1,200 per month for the mayor. I was an advocate to increase those salaries to a living wage, because if a candidate did get lucky enough to win, they could not live on those salaries. And unless they were independently wealthy, own their own business, they would be hard pressed to serve. Today, the city council is well diversified in terms of sex, age, and ethnicity. And in my opinion, that is the result of term limits and district elections.
Thank you for your service in doing that. All right, Mel, can you share with us why and how you founded the Endowment for Youth Committee?
Yes. Well, during that time, there was drugs coming into our community, and it affected my family, and I'm sure a lot of other families. But I had this dream, which was a compelling dream, and which I was led to act on that dream. And that's how the endowment started, or why. But my goal was to help the community, you know, to maybe do something about the drugs that was coming into the community, and especially affecting children and adults as well. So I wanted the endowment to be the organization that brought help for the community, involving children and adults with alcohol or just drug problems, period. And so that's kind of what happened with it, and why it started and how it started. It was a nonprofit. I was prepared because I'd worked for the BBB, which is the Better Business Bureau. They were also nonprofit. So working there, I got a chance to know about, you know, the organizations, the nonprofits and things of that nature through the state, you know, which governs the nonprofits. So I was really ready for that job. But I wanted the job, my desire, I tell you, my desire was that EYC, which is short for Endowment for Youth, would be strong and create an environment which would afford our children a better opportunity to grow, and, you know, in all areas of life, leading productive lives, you know, and trying to, you know, that would ensure a bright and prosperous future, you know, for the young folks, and especially for the children. Mm-hmm. So my prayer was that God would use the endowment to make a difference. So I believe it did. We had a lot of programs going for children. One for the Black Achievers Awards Committee, we had that. And then we had a lot of other activities, you know, athletic stuff, and just all kinds of things we had going, tutorial programs in schools that were providing help for the children who were having trouble, you know, with their lessons and so forth. So that was why it started. That was how it started. And that was my hope for that organization, to bring something visibly and new to the community that would deter what was coming into our community that was threatening our children and other people.
May I add something to that?
Absolutely.
First, I want to thank Mrs. Richey. Thank you so much. If I haven't done this before, thank you so much for your vision and making it a reality, because besides the George Washington Carver, the EYC was one of the best motivating organizations in Santa Barbara for children of color during that time that Santa Barbara was experiencing what we call the war on drugs. And the EYC and the Black Achievement Awards was a fantastic motivator for children elementary through high school. And so kids would go back to school and share, oh, look, I got an award. It was an incentive for the others that may not have been doing as well. It motivated those students to work harder and then they went on to receive an academic award or best attendance award the following years. And I know the fact that it really motivated some kids that weren't doing as well to not only achieve, but to go on to college. So that was a great program for Santa Barbara. And my uncle Theo Thomas, my dad's brother, was one of the presidents. So I got firsthand to see the workings of what you did and see your vision become a reality. So again, thank you so much for your vision and your love, not for just your own children, but for all the children of our community. Thank you, Ms. Richey.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wanda. So Mel, you also served on the city's Franklin Neighborhood Advisory Committee for 9 years. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yes, that was a little committee they put together, the city, just to check out what was going on in the community, you know, whether it was lighting needed, because there were some places might be dark, you know, people live in that area, the darkness, and they needed more light. So we would look at that and we would, you know, say to the city people, this is what we need to do. You know, if it was broken sidewalks or anything like that, or if it was, for instance, is bringing people into the workforce, you know, at the Franklin Center, because that's where we were having our meetings at, and we were watching to see, you know, who they had on their payroll and all this kind of stuff. So we realized that it needed some color in the Franklin Center. And we took applications and we distributed them to people that we knew would be qualified. And so we came up with with Lillian West. She's passed on now, but she was the one out of the people that we gave the applications to. She was chosen for that position at the Franklin Center. So it was things like that, just to better the community, do something that's going to improve things. And, you know, that's what we did.
Speaking of the Franklin Center, Wanda, your cousin Bill Sims was one of the key figures in getting the Franklin Neighborhood Center built. Can you share a little bit about how that came about? You're muted. Wanda, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now? I was fairly young when they first built the Franklin Center, but I do know that Bill was always very civic and community minded. He always wanted to be involved and wanted to see people of color and unrepresented people to be provided the same resources that others had. And unfortunately, on the east side of Santa Barbara, that didn't always happen. A lot of people didn't have the medical care that or could afford, you know, they didn't have like good insurance policies, you know, insurance like we do on our jobs. And so I think that's probably how it got started in his eyes. And then I know that Dr. McMillan was not only a family physician, in fact, he delivered me, but he was a family friend and very involved in the community. So I think that Bill probably got with Dr. McMillan, and I'm guessing at some of this, and I'm sure probably Mr. Garrett or Mrs. Richey probably could add to that. But I think that those two got together, and that's kind of where things started. And I also remember that Mr. and Mrs. Nelson, who were very involved with the Franklin Center, they were really good friends with Bill. So I'm not sure if they were there in the beginning, but I know that they were a very, very important part of the Franklin Center as well.
Yes.
So Isaac, did you want to add to that a little bit?
Yes, I'll add to that. 2 weeks after the assassination of Dr. King on April 23rd, 1968, Dr. Macmillan made a presentation before the City Council entitled, I Who Lived. I won't go through the whole orientation that he made, but I'll just go through a portion of it to give you an indication as to how the Franklin Center got started. He, therefore, since man's relationship has become our foremost national problem, I would like to make the following proposal. If we are really interested in making Dr. King's dream come true, and if we are interested in our own survival, the proposal that he made is this. Number one, that the council sponsor a Martin Luther King Memorial of Deeds by establishing a Human Relations Institute of Social Services for the disadvantaged for our city, and set a goal of $10 million to be raised in the next 6 months. Number two, that our city council give leadership and moral support to search and effort by initially contributing $100,000. Number three, that each councilman act as an ambassador of goodwill, appoint their own committee expert volunteers, fundraisers to be responsible for $1 million. Number four, that we borrow the skills of executive board members of the 2 hospitals in our midst for guidance in this endeavor. Number five, that the city council recruit the aid of city expertise in the area of social and human relations to implement and not research the problem. Now, there's other recommendations he made, but I won't take the time unless you so desire me to go through them. And that was the beginning of the idea of providing a social service in the minority neighborhood. The city council did get HUD funding for that project, most of it. I think they contributed about 10% of city funds to complete it.
Yeah.
May I add just one little segment about the Franklin Center?
Sure.
Yes, the late great Shirley Kennedy, she created the first African-American float that was recognized by the Franklin Center. And the first African, I don't think they had an additional float after that, but Shirley Kennedy created the first African-American float. And I know I was on there as Pío Pico of Spain, one of the first African-American mulatto governors of Spain, and Mavis Thibodeau was there, and Bernard Hicks, and about 5 or 6 other people from Santa Barbara. It was very successful, and that will always be remembered in Santa Barbara, and that's part of my memory that I will never forget, to have a black float in the Fiesta Parade. That was remarkable. I hope we can do it again in the future.
Wow. Well, you'll have to spearhead that.
I just might. Okay.
There you go.
All right.
So back to Melvin. Can you tell us how Herman and Valencia Nelson were integral to the Franklin Center?
Sure. She was the director at the center at that time, and was very, she did a lot of good things for the community. There was a food bank, and when there were people who needed food, extra food or whatever, she would always make that possible for them to come to the center, or even they had transportation they would take it to wherever they needed to take it to, which was really good. She was always offering various services to the community. One of the things that she did was the first meeting that we had for the endowment. She was the one that arranged for us to have that meeting at the Franklin Center. So she was always doing things to help the community, looking out for people, who needed that kind of help or whatever kind of help it was. It wasn't just the food bank thing, but there were other issues that may come along that they could give insight to, or refer the people to where they needed to go to get the help they needed. So very valuable.
Sounds like it. Thank you. And finally, Isaac, it seems that you had a good friendship with Dr. McMillan. I think Wanda mentioned that a minute ago, who was one of the founders of Goleta Valley Hospital. What can you tell us about what motivated his desire to start the hospital?
Well, he was frustrated with the two hospitals that we had at present, especially with St. Francis Hospital. He didn't like the way that they treated his patients. He didn't like them asking him their ethnicity, their color, their financial well-being when he called to have them admitted. He didn't like them separating his patients or putting them in a private room when there was no other Afro-Americans in the hospital that he could put them with, when other patients was being put in a room 3 and 4 together sharing expenses, and his patients had to bear the room expense all by themselves at a higher rate, and including one of his staff members who went in to deliver a child, and they put her in a private room and didn't give her the attention that she deserved. And there were some repercussions as a result of that. So he was very frustrated with the hospital system here.
Thank you
And
for
he felt
sharing.
that one of the ways to eliminate the situation would be to build another hospital. And that's what he and others communicated and pooled their resources and done.
Thank you for that. You all have some amazing accomplishments and have been so instrumental in the community. So let's talk a little bit now. This question's open to anyone who wants to answer it. Just like in the book, The Yellow House, family and community were often synonymous. Can you share with us a little on how you can relate to that? So Wanda, you're muted.
I'll go ahead.
Sorry about that. Do you want me to go? Do you want to go
Yeah,
ahead?
yes, please go ahead.
Like in the book, church, community, and family, it was just a blurred line. It went hand in hand. Like even on this panel, I know Mrs. Richey from our churches fellowshipping together. Mr. Garrett, I know from being a former member of Lewis Chapel and someone that my mom and my dad considered a good friend. The churches in Santa Barbara helped each other, especially when they were in crisis. We supported each other from programming to if one church was having a chicken dinner or a fish fry to raise funds, we were always there for each other. When my parents got married, actually, Lewis Chapel wasn't erected. The building wasn't there. So my parents actually got married up the street at Second Baptist Church, and we've always had a good friendship with them. When my father passed away, the first people at the door to see my mom was Reverend and Mrs. Wilkes. Reverend Wilkes was the pastor of Second Baptist. Whenever my mom was in the hospital, or even when she passed away, Reverend Ficklin was always there for our family when anybody was in trouble. So everybody in our small little tight-knit group in Santa Barbara, we supported each other. We always stuck together. And one last thing, reading The Yellow House, which I really, really enjoyed. One thing I could not help but think about is how the skyrocketing housing cost is drove out a lot of the thriving Black businesses that Santa Barbara used to have. And actually, that's probably why the African American community has dwindled to what it has, because it's just way too expensive. The salaries don't match with what the cost of housing or the cost of living is. But I really did enjoy the book. It really kind of gave me that aha moment and made me think of some of the things and the problems in Santa Barbara. But let me tell you, we definitely cannot compare it to Louisiana.
No.
Not the
Yes.
problems and the issues that they had there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I'd like to just add to what Mrs. Thomas just mentioned. Yes, although we were approximately 1% of the population in Santa Barbara, we did have I might be wrong, I think it was 4 churches. And If you ever needed any assistance, if you needed an attorney, you can always come to Second Baptist. Pastor Wilkes' daughter was an attorney. If you wanted to get a good doctor, you go down to Lewis Chapel. If you needed help with school, you also go to Lewis Chapel, as well as Friendship. But it was like truly like a yellow book where you find resources, but all you had to do, now there was no internet. Sometimes myself, I would just have to go down to Friendship Baptist, another church, to find some resources. And before church was over, I had everything that I needed. So yes, service was there, and our churches played a key role in our upbringing and unity within Santa Barbara during that period in time. And I must also mention that my grandparents were also founding charter members of Second Baptist Church.
Thank you. And Mel, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes. I just got the book recently, so I haven't had a chance to really read it through, but the part I did read reminded me of some of the injustices that happened in Mississippi. That was when they talked about the oak trees being taken away and the houses, all gone. And that was definitely, it really featured Mississippi all the way, because things like that happened, and there's so many things that went on in Mississippi and other places too, that maybe people just don't realize that they happen or don't know about it. But that one thing did bring back memories for me, is how they would, people would just come along and just destroy things, that Black people had problems with, or not, maybe not problems with, but if they had something that was really, they thought that Black people shouldn't have, those kind of things they would try to destroy, whatever way it happened. They didn't care how it happened, I mean, they just, well, I don't want to go into saying this, but what happened to some people when the other side that didn't like Black people, a lot of things happened. And that was like some of the things that this book talks about. Some of those same things happened down in Mississippi. You got burned out or whatever. They didn't care, you got killed. So many bad things, just injustice all over the place, too much injustice.
Oh, it is an incredible book. Isaac, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes, I would just add that I was raised in a Christian home, and family was basically number one. In other words, we put God first and then family.
Yes.
And then community and others as well. The church was very supportive of the community itself at large. When one suffered, people would go to their aid and etc. And just to piggyback on the thing that Wanda mentioned about Blacks not living in Santa Barbara, a lot of our Black kids, when they leave Santa Barbara, go to college, they make connections with other people in their community, because of the fact that some of them parents did not or does not have property here, as I had mentioned before, being able to build wealth by purchasing real estate. They had no reason to return. They didn't want to return back to Santa Barbara to pay this high rent, and they certainly wouldn't be able to get a job making enough to afford to buy a home. I served on some of the interviews for the city and the county, interviewing high-level people coming into Santa Barbara. Some of them had intentions of moving here, but after they realized what the salary and the cost of living was going to be, they changed their mind and stayed where they was at instead of moving to Santa Barbara.
All right, thank you for that. So let's turn now to just some final thoughts. The first question, out of all of your family's accomplishments and contributions, what are you most proud of and how do you think it made a difference? So who would like to start with that? What are you most proud of? How about you, Wilbur?
Right. I'm most proud of my grandfather and mom. My grandfather excelling in business, helping the community to establish itself and the service that he provided. And always my mother would go back and serve the community. So yeah, so I'm proud of my grandfather, the business that he established, and the children in the community seeing this and noticed his success, and they tried to build upon it. So that's what I'm most proud about. One of the things.
Thank you. How about you, Wanda? What are you most proud of?
Well, my family's focus has always been service to others. My grandparents were that way, and they taught my mother. My mother and father passed it on to me. When I was missionary president at Lewis Chapel, we partnered with the Family Service Agency, which was down the street. And we annually provided families with food and clothing and other items that they need. And because of my mother's encouragement, I also became the president of the Southern California Region Missionary Society within the CME Church. So I went up Southern California actually and assisted organizing the missionary societies to provide the disenfranchised with encouragement, spiritual guidance, and other essentials that they need. And as far as my family, you know, that's just what my family was all about, starting with my grandparents. When it wasn't popular to be a foster parent, they fostered children that needed homes. I went to school with kids and they kind of recognized me. And then we found out later it's because my grandparents actually fostered them. My grandparents also would host families or allow families to live with them when they migrated from Texas until they got on their feet. My mom on her job, she helped deliver many, many babies, and that might have been her job, but because of her really gentle and nurturing personality, she was really good with the women in the community. And my dad would, I would always call him the African-American ambassador at UCSB. He was a journeyman painter. He wasn't a professor, he was a painter. But because of his being so visible, he would greet and also nurture some of the students that came from predominantly Black communities, and then coming to UCSB would be like a culture shock. And he would always be so friendly and invite them over to the house. We fed many a student, and also invite them to church. But again, I can talk about so many of my family members. My Uncle Theo nurtured students that wanted to go into printing. My Uncle Felix, he worked at Hillside House with disabled students and people. So again, my family's focus was on serving others, because like Mr. Garrett said, you serve God, your family, and your community. That's how I was raised, and I'm thankful that I was part of my family, but also part of the Santa Barbara community.
Thank you. Mel, what are you most proud of? And how do you think it made a difference?
Well, I think my example to my children, the things that I wanted to pursue, my goals in life, I wanted to pursue, and I know that I had to really work for that. So I think by my setting that example for them as good, hardworking, never quitting, don't stop. You keep going to try and reach your goal. And that's the one thing that I always had in my mind, for them, if they would just follow my example that I set for them, that they would be, good people and educated and, and maybe to accomplish the goals that they want to accomplish. And so that's what I did. I had them in church. I raised them up in church, and, so that they would know how to treat people, know about God in their lives and things of that nature, and also hard work, and to see me reach my goals that I wanted, and for them to see me reach that goal. As when I said going to college, my son would say, Mom, when I saw you going to college, I know I had to go. So then I felt like they had followed my example to that point. All of them are, good workers, good jobs. So I'm really thankful for that. And I feel proud about the fact that they did follow my example and turned out to be good people.
Great. All right. And lastly, Isaac, what are you most proud of?
Well, there's a couple of things that I would point to. I would start off with basically my real estate career. I am proud of the fact that instead of being a complete adversary, I ended up being an ally with my real estate colleagues and board of realtors. Although we did have some differences and getting to the point to whereby we were able to work through them without, with in-house, you might say, because after the fact that I became president of the NAACP, the executive officer and the president of the board at that time, we did sit down and have a conversation and talk about, my being the president and also being a member of the board. If there was a conflict, how we would resolve that, because I didn't want to have to go against my peers, but I would if I had to. That was resolved amicably, and I'm very satisfied with that. At the same time, a lot of the problems that we were facing wasn't because of the local board. Some of it was because of the national and the state regulations. They were prohibited from doing certain things. And also, I'm pretty well satisfied with the makeup of our city council now as a result of the district election and term limits and how things are going. I'm not always satisfied with the decisions they make, but that's the process. They are not there to satisfy me. They are there to work to satisfy the people. So I feel that I did make a small contribution to that effort to get us where we are now.
Yes, you did. All right, final question. And let's see, briefly, since we're getting short on time here, briefly, why did you choose to participate in this exhibit? Wanda, why did you choose to participate?
Well, I was hesitant at first to do it, but my daughter talked me into it. I went online and I saw, well, before that I said I would do it because of my interest in my ancestry. And I've been working on that for years, and I am able to go pretty far back, but have hit some roadblocks. And she encouraged me to do it. She says, Mom, this has become your passion. You should go ahead and do it. Then after I went online and looked at the exhibit, I was so fascinated and pleased with what I saw. I said that I would do it, but I have to admit that I'm on the, feel like the what is it, the weakest link with the panel of such outstanding people. But I really have enjoyed it, and I thank you.
Thank you. No chance of that, Wanda. Mel, how about you? Why did you choose to participate?
Well, I didn't know about it. I didn't know anything about it until I heard about it. And I think I heard about it through Onja, but Holly talking to me and telling me what it was about and what she was trying to accomplish. I thought it was a good idea. And she asked me and I said, yes. Okay.
Well, we're glad you did. Thank you. How about you, Isaac? Why did you decide to participate?
Well, when I was asked, I asked the question, will anyone benefit from it? And I was told yes. And I asked another question, what is required of me? And once I had that question answered, then I said yes.
Thank you. And Wilbur, what
Yes.
inspired you to participate?
Well, I know it's very important that our story is told, especially for the youth and members of our society, to know that African Americans made a huge contribution to Santa Barbara and to our country. And the story has to be told. And I appreciate the Santa Barbara Genealogical Society for putting this on. I mean, you guys really should be commended and honored for this hard work. It was really fantastic, and continue the work that you started. And thank you for having me on. But yes, it's a blessing to be on. Our story has to be told, our American story. Thank you.
Thank you. And we are so honored and so thrilled that you chose to spend your time with us tonight and tell your stories to the members of the audience who came to listen to what you had to say. I mean, it's one thing to see it in the exhibit, but it's quite another thing to hear you telling it live. So thank you so much. This was such a blessing to be able to hear your stories from you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing us the privilege.
Absolutely. And I want to encourage everybody to stop by the website and see this exhibit. You really have to see it. It is amazing, so that you can learn more about these speakers and their families, as well as the other speakers. Check out their biographies, read about the church histories, the biographies on the local athletes and the military veterans and artists, and the organizations and social clubs that were important to African Americans in our community from 1890 to the 1990s. So I'm going to turn it back to Holly, and then we will go to the questions.
Thank you so much again to our panelists. Even working through the exhibit, you know, it was just an honor working with you all. And those who are not on the exhibit, we thank you. I want to share with you, we do have a survey about tonight's program. I hope you can help us fill out for us and let us know how we're doing, and it helps us for our future programs. And also Santa Barbara Public Library created a community asset map. And so, you know, you have favorite locations throughout Santa Barbara. Maybe they're not here anymore, maybe they are here. So we would love for you to add your favorite places. And then we have 2 more Book to Action events. We have a housing panel, and Mr. Garrett had briefly had talked about housing issues. So I think it will be a great panel to attend. And then there'll be an African-American genealogy presentation from an African-American professional genealogist. And that should be really great too. You can sign up for those, register for those events on our event calendar at the Santa Barbara Public Library. And you can also, if you don't have the Yellow House yet and you want to have a copy, please email J. Lemberger, Jen, and we can send you a copy. And then if you're interested in the Genealogy Society, we welcome you, and visit our website and our exhibit if you haven't attended. And we will be adding more to the exhibit. It's all virtual and we learn more information. And so keep checking back, and we would love to have you. We're gonna do a little bit of questions, and we'd love to hear your questions for the panelists. If we're not able to answer a question or you have more, please email me at outreach@sbgen.org, and I can get back with you with questions.
All right, thank you, Holly. So if you do have a question, please feel free to pop it in the Q&A section down at the bottom of your screen. If you hover down there, you'll see 2 little speech balloons that say Q&A. You can type in there, or you can just raise your hand and we will unmute you and you can ask it yourself. So we did get one question earlier today. Gail would like to know, what is the estimated current African-American population in the Santa Barbara city or county area? So what do you think, panelists? Oh, Kate, do you have that answer?
Yeah, I saw that earlier, Gail. I saw your question. And so I did a little lookabout on the internet. And currently the number in the city, the number of African-Americans is 1,400, which is extremely low. So the numbers have gone quite a bit down. In the county, the number is 8,500. So it's a little bit higher than that. But still, it was around 1,000 back in 1940. And so that number in 80 years has not gone up very much. I think it went up a little, and now it's really dropped again. Like the panelists were talking, there's the housing problem and salaries.
Do any of the panelists want to add anything to that? Okay. Well, I don't see any hands up. Last chance to ask your questions. This is your chance to pick their brains or to find out some information. Okay, we did get a question here from Crystal. She says, hello, my name is Crystal Lewis Livingston, daughter number 3 of 4, born to Deacon James C. and Deaconess Della Mae Lewis, who moved to Santa Barbara from Louisiana in the 1940s. So nice to see childhood friends Kim and his sister Lenore, as well as Mrs. Richey. I imagine some may remember me, my sisters Shirley, Carolyn, and Benita, as well as my parents. I currently live in Atlanta, Georgia. And she says, thank you for this presentation.
Mhm.
So thank you, Crystal, for your input. We appreciate that. And also Patricia, she sent a note saying, thank you for sharing your stories. And Elle Riles also said that she found this to be very interesting and she really appreciated you sharing your stories. So Holly is putting the links in that she talked about a few minutes ago in the chat, so you can click on those. You don't have to memorize them. And I don't see any hands up or see any more questions going into the chat. So I am going to say thank you to all of our audience for spending your Friday evening with us and hearing these amazing stories. And we appreciate all of you for coming. We appreciate our panelists. And kudos to the outreach committee. This was amazing. And thank you for inviting me to participate. Holly.
Great, thank you so much. And I thank you, Elizabeth, for taking this on. And thank you all the panelists here. I really appreciate it. And thank you to our audience for joining us. We did run a little longer, so I appreciate you all hanging out with us. And again, if you have any questions that come up, please email me at outreach@sbgen.org. And thank you, everybody.